I had a revenge affair after I suspected my wife of having a second affair. People expect me to feel remorse, I really don't. I met my then future wife 10 years ago and we started dating shortly after. We were both around 15 at the time. Our relationship was always great, we only had minor fights and conflicts, nothing too serious. Looking back, however, I now realize that it was always me putting in most of the effort and initiating most things. From communication, planning dates to sex and more. I'd be the one to bring up dates and plan them, to send her messages first, to reach out and start conversations. Our sex life wasn't bad, we had sex ranging from several times a week to several times a day. I was the one who always wanted to try new and kinky things. She was more reserved. She herself enjoyed giving me oral but never wanted to do it herself, because it was dirty and disgusting. I've been the one who always made more money and was financially more successful. She always preferred to pursue her hobbies, family, and quickly fell into a housewife routine out of her own volition, to the point where eventually she would only work part-time. This isn't to say she was a gold digger, far from it. I guess she just always felt she had settled. I used to have fairly bad acne in the past, got my dental done late and wasn't quite as good in shape as I should have been. She never showed any signs of this, so I really had no clue. About 5 years into our relationship and 1 year into our marriage, she met a guy at the gym. She claims they were initially just friends. Would work out together and liked talking to one another, would chat online and even went out to get dinner and such. I was kept completely in the dark about this new friend and never suspected a thing. A few months into this, she went on a weekend trip with friends. A trip I had to pay her share for. Leaving on a Friday, she was back on Saturday already, telling me she had had a fallout with the friend she went on the trip with. She was depressed the entire day, withdrawn into herself, and started to cry several times. At this point I was mostly worried about her and didn't suspect a thing. She eventually broke down crying for good and confessed that she had cheated on me. It took me quite some time to register what she had just told me, what she had done, and I was numb for the first few minutes. By the time I came out of my stupor, I felt like someone had hit me with a sledgehammer to the heart. I left the room and threw up several times before breaking down and crying like a baby myself. She told me she didn't mean for it to happen, that it was a mistake. That she felt such strong attraction, such a deep connection, and couldn't help herself. However, that after they spent the first night together, when she woke up in the morning, she realized what she had done. That he didn't care about her, didn't love her, and was only using her, and that she didn't love or care about him either, and it had just been a short-lived crush. To make the betrayal worse, she admitted that she had done with him things such as oral she had always refused to do with me, because emasculating me by having an affair apparently hadn't been enough. Since the day we met, I had loved her. I had always been proud that our relationship had weathered storms where others had run aground. That my family loved her and my friends liked her. I'd always been told how lucky I was and bragged that I had such a wonderful girlfriend and later wife. I did my best to shower her my affection all this time, to surprise her with gifts and let her know how much she meant to me. I would do all I could to always make certain she came first for me, was willing to give her oral because she liked it, and despite her not reciprocating, her pleasure always came first for me. What quickly followed was anger and despair. I would yell at her while tears were streaming down my face, asking her why she did it, how she could do this to me, and if she didn't love me anymore. Her answer was that she did not know why, that she had been weak and was caught up in the moment. She begged for forgiveness and for me to give her another chance. She gave me complete transparency, immediately quit the gym, which turned out to be unnecessary, as when I tried to confront him I came to know that he had bailed as well. She came clean to both my parents and her mother, and I did the best I could to move on. We booked marriage counseling shortly afterwards and entered individual therapy. I would occasionally lash out in fits of anger, never physical but verbally, calling her names and worse. For the most part she took this willingly. Only few times she responded in kind, telling me she would take me for all I was worth, and no other woman would ever love me. Both my and her parents tried the best to keep me in this relationship. Back then I foolishly thought at least my parents would have my best interest at heart. They told me mistakes happen, that we could overcome this and grow as a couple and people. That she loved me despite everything. It took me months to get beyond this, for the anger and revulsion to subside. I never loved her the same as I did before, but I came to love this new her, or at least I thought I did. She was willing to do everything she could to help us heal and make it work. After her outbursts she signed a post-nuptial agreement in my favor, foregoing most every support on my end. She initiated a lot more and our sex life actually improved. I was unwilling to give her oral after this. The idea itself completely disgusted me. We have been each other's first in pretty much everything. Then she went and had unprotected sex with the AP. She never complained despite how much she loved this prior. She also was willing to do a lot more things with me now. She later said me asking her if I was so disgusting to her or why she was willing to do these things with him she wasn't with me deeply hurt her and she wanted to make up for it. For a few years we were genuinely happy. I started going to the gym myself on the regular and other problems I used to have such as the acne cleared up by themselves. As time went on I stopped checking up on her and stopped suspecting foul play on her part. She doesn't go out much on her own anymore and if she does it's usually just with mutual friends. Everything was great or so I thought till about half a year ago. After restructuring at work I met female co-worker. We instantly hit it off, had mutual interests and got along great. We would exchange messages, stay later at work so we could chat and more. At this point I had no actual intention to take this anywhere improper. I don't know why but the relationship I was sharing with this co-worker brought a lot of old resentment, distrust and anger back to the surface. I tried hard to forgive and forget but deep down I never got over it. If I could rein myself in, if I could stop this from escalating, why couldn't she? That she seemingly never suffered any consequences for her behavior, that everyone who knew had so easily forgiven her helped fuel my resentment. I started checking on her again. I looked at call logs and messages and lo and behold I found exactly what I at this point thought I would. A slew of calls with a guy the first considered one of my closest friends up until this point in the last week while I was at work. At first I was completely livid and had half a mind to throw her out of the house instantly, then I simply went cold. I found I didn't care anymore, finding this in one fell swoop killed any love or lingering attachment I still had for her. The next day I met with the co-worker and embarked on my own affair. It was cathartic, it helped me shed a weight on my mind and emotional health I never knew I had. I felt better and more free than I had in years. I also shortly after got in touch with a divorce lawyer. I simply wanted out at this point. I increasingly stayed out, didn't bother to make many excuses and avoided my wife as much as I could. There was no way she wouldn't pick up on that and I can genuinely say I didn't care. It took her an entire week to work up the courage to finally approach me and ask me what was going on. I came clean at that point. I told her I knew about the calls. I told her I knew she hadn't told me about her being in contact with him behind me back. I told her I knew she was having an affair again or working herself up to one. Then I told her about my own affair, all the graphic details. As horrible as it sounds, seeing the same hurt and crushing her in the way she had once crushed me felt liberating. She began to wail and cry. She threw up in the living room. First she screamed, then she apologized. She claimed it wasn't like that. That she didn't have an affair with him. That they were planning a surprise party for my upcoming birthday. Then she did something I didn't expect, especially after I had told her I wanted a divorce and had an affair of my own. She pleaded for me to stay with her, to try and make this work, told me she loved me more than anyone. I simply left at that point and went to a motel. I've completely cut off all contact with her and refused to even acknowledge her existence. That way 2 weeks ago. Since her mother is living almost 500 miles away. She is now of all people staying with my parents. Other people, mutual friends, family and even my parents have been bombarding me with messages. From pleading me to contact her, all the way to threatening and insulting me. From telling me she's suicidal and barely eats and wants to make this work no matter what, to demanding I beg her for forgiveness for my transgressions. The only ones I have personally talked to were my parents, whom I have since lost any and all respect to. I have found out that my own mother had at least 3 affairs, all of whom my father has forgiven her for. Which might have been one of the reasons especially my mother sided with her all that time ago. Yet they're angry at me for doing this to her, for not acting as a man is supposed to act, for running away from my responsibilities and hurting my wife in this way. My mother told me she's going to take care of her for me till I come to my senses, as if me wanting her back is somehow a given, and if she's a small furry animal others have to look after. They and others have also backed up her claims about why she contacted other people in secrecy, including the former friend. I have a hard time believing any of them given their reaction to her and my affair are like night and day. On the positive side, I've found that she was wrong, that nobody else would want me. I've since seen the other woman several times and had 2 casual hookups. Apparently I'm not unattractive after all. TLDR, my wife had an affair almost 5 years ago with a guy she met at the gym. She confessed shortly after and we worked through it. She did things with him she refused to do with me prior to this, and that knowledge never really stopped hurting me. I had thought I had managed to get beyond the anger and resentment, but recently found out I hadn't. Shortly after I found evidence of another affair, and instead of confronting her I started an affair of my own. She and others claim she wasn't having an affair at all. Everyone, including my own parents who told me I had to forgive her and try to do again, are now branding me as a horrible person and expect me to get back with her and atone. My parents actually took her in, apparently to keep her safe till I come to my senses. I really don't want to and don't feel bad about this at all. If anything, it feels like we're finally drawing even. My husband is cheating on me with my best friend. I'm honestly not sure where to start, so I guess I'll just start. My husband and I have been dating since I was 19 and he was 22. We've been married for 6 years now. We have 2 kids and I'm 6 months pregnant with our 3rd. 2 years ago I found out my dad has stage 3 colon cancer. My dad is my only parent as my mom passed away when I was 12. He's my favorite human and life without him doesn't seem as colorful. His laugh is contagious and he gives these big bear hugs that seem to make all of your broken pieces feel like they're perfectly in place again. Whenever I've had a hard day he doesn't poke and prod and just lets me vent and listens. About 5 months ago we discovered the treatments aren't working for him, an indirect quote of the doctor. He said, "Months, not years." Since then he's gotten progressively worse and now is losing memory. He looked at the dog he got for me on my 21st birthday and said, "Wow, that's a nice dog, where'd you get it?" My husband has been my absolute rock. He has been there for me, holding my hand and helping me through this. He's been so loving and attentive to both my kids and I. Don't get me wrong, I am a mother first always. I don't allow myself to wallow. My kids are still loved, cared for, played with, and I haven't let my load slack around the house. Once my dad got his updated prognosis, my husband encouraged me to quit my job. About a month later we discovered we were pregnant again and I still hadn't let go of my job. I kept holding out for some reason. After finding out I was pregnant again he assured me it was still okay to quit my job, that honestly it would save us a small fortune on daycare costs anyways. So I did, I quit my job. My best friend and I have been friends since diapers. Her family is like my family and vice versa. My mom and her mom grew up together. We've always been solid, and right after my dad's appointment when we found out he had so little time left I drove straight to her house and she held me while I cried for hours. If there are soulmates in friend form, she was mine. Thick as thieves, is what my mom used to say. This morning as I was up with my 3-year-old my husband's work alarm was going off. He has a few he sets, so I turned that one off and gently woke him up. He said he was up late working so he took the morning off. Rolled over and went back to sleep. As I went to turn off the remainder of his alarms, I saw a text from my friend on his lock screen that said, "I'm assuming since there hasn't been an angry pregnant lady on my doorstep you haven't told her about us yet." Time froze in that moment. I took his phone and walked away and just read their conversations. 4 months this man has been fucking my best friend. 4 months these people have been lying to my face. And I know what you're going to say, you should have seen the warning signs. But I've been clutching this phone in my hand for 2 hours and nothing. He has been so loving and attentive to me, but he always has been so kind and gentle. There has been no late night work nights except for once in a blue moon. There has been no lingering touches between them or even glances. They act as they have since the day I first introduced them. How sick is it that she calls him her brother but she screws him? I know so many people get a moment of clarity in situations like this, but I have none. Aside from being sad about my dad, I haven't changed. I'm still a loving wife and mother. I still doted on him and my children. I talk to him about how he is doing and how was his day every freaking day. I haven't allowed the ground to swallow me whole. I know what I have to do now, but I just don't want to. I'm about to lose my family and my support system in one blow. I'll confront him tomorrow. Today I just need this last 24 hours of peace. As for her, I won't give her the satisfaction of a response. I don't care why she did it. She did it and it's done. I was always the friend who cleaned up her messes. After today I will cut her out of my life like she never mattered at all. This has to be the hardest storm I'll ever weather, but damn it, I know it'll sail through it. If not for me, for my children. Aida for asking my son to get a paternity test. My son has found out one of his ex-girlfriends is 8 months pregnant. He knew nothing of the sort of her being pregnant until now, and now he's just expected to accept everything, no questions asked. My daughter is good friends with this girl and knew about her pregnancy but said nothing to us because her friend asked her not to. My son was head over heels for this lady, but she ended up breaking his heart by cheating on him and was very needy and manipulative. He spent a lot of money on her because she would ask for gift my son couldn't even afford and convince him to use one of my credit cards to achieve it. My daughter, who isn't currently living with us and is actually rooming with her by her college, is also being manipulated by her and thinks she only does good and doesn't believe that she convinced her brother to use my credit or that she even cheated. Showed up with my son's ex-girlfriend at my door to help her tell us that she's pregnant. When I seen her there at my door visually pregnant, I knew she was gonna be saying that my son is the father of her child and immediately said that my son will not be putting in any money or time until there is a paternity test proving that is his child. My son backed me up and agreed. My daughter was horrified by my comment and accused me of encouraging him to be a deadbeat father and was upset I didn't even give them a chance to explain themselves. My son's ex starting crying, saying you always assume the worst of me and that she went 8 months of pregnancy alone and the least we could do is ensure she is taken care of for the betterment of his child. I do agree that if this is his child we gonna ensure mom is doing well to ensure baby is doing well, but I don't want my son to be involved with her only to get his heart broken again and only to find out that the child isn't his. Update. My daughter and I spoke on the phone. I explained to her that if the baby really is his, then the text will only lock in his responsibility for the baby and that there is no way I'd ever encourage my son to abandon any of my grandbabies. My daughter finally agreed that the test would be beneficial and told me she'd call me back later. I ended up getting a text back instead of a call asking if they could come back over to talk, which I agreed to. When they came over, my son's ex admitted to not actually knowing who the father was and that she'd been in a relationship with multiple guys, which is why she took so long telling my son, because she was trying to figure out who's the father of her child, but she's now certain it's my son. She agreed to do the paternity test as soon as we able to do one on the condition I pay for it. One other thing I found out is that my daughter and my son's ex have actually developed a romantic relationship, which is beyond shocking to me. I mean, it explains why she'd been sticking up for my son's ex as much as she'd been doing, but it's just not something I thought my daughter would ever do. I mean, that's her brother ex. Someone who break his reed, it's just not something I can understand. I'll always love my daughter, but it just hurts me seeing my son feeling really hurt by this whole situation. Aida for distancing myself from my daughter after she took her mother's side. I found out that my wife of 20 plus years was having an affair. I was completely hurt over this and have started divorce proceedings. Obviously this has been hard on our 4 children, but I cannot spend the rest of my life with someone I can't trust. Before we got married, my wife's family had money and demanded I sign a prenup. I had no problem, but since then the family money has been lost due to bad investments and lawsuits. My wife was a SOM for the majority of our marriage. Our youngest child is 19 and because of the prenup she can't get alimony. In short, my wife will be screwed. The only thing we own together was our house, and while it is paid off, my wife won't be able to afford the upkeep or WA fees, so she will effectively be homeless. I have no intention of giving her any type of support for any reason. Since serving my wife divorce papers, I have refused direct contact as my lawyer has advised, but she's now playing dirty by getting the children involved. We have 2 boys and 2 girls, and my wife has been pleading with them to get me to agree to halt the divorce proceedings in favor of counseling. After I told my children that I had no interest wasting any more of my life with that woman, they have all essentially backed off except for my oldest, Christy. She's very close to her mother and can't imagine life where her parents aren't married. Christy tells me that her mother realizes her mistake and will do whatever it takes to make things right. She says that I owed it to the family to work things out. I refused and told her that it wasn't her place to make those kinds of demands. Since then, the only time Christy talks to me is when she's sobbing and asking me not to destroy the family. I understand that this is hard for her and offered to pay for therapy so she can cope, but she said there wouldn't be anything to cope with if I wasn't trying to divorce her mother. Since Christy is being too emotional to act within reason and refused therapy, I have been resolved to limit contact until after the divorce. However, my other children are saying that Christy's behavior is getting worse. Aida for taking a step away from my daughter for a while. Update. I told her that I try to be as forgiving and empathetic as possible, but I will not ever tolerate people who lie with malicious and selfish intent and try to cut them out of my personal life as much as possible. I was very calm when I said this and tried to be as loving as I could to my child, but it didn't work. Christy ended up breaking down and again tried to get me to convince me not to divorce her mother and just forgive her. I refused and in the end went NC with Christy for a little bit. I only spoke to her again 2 days before my other daughter's, Jane's birthday, through a text asking her to not bring up the divorce since this was going to be the first time my wife and I would be in each other's presence since I filed. I sent the same text to her mother, and I didn't hear anything from either of them. On Jane's birthday things were a little tense and awkward, but I thought it was going good. Until my wife decided to be passive-aggressive with a speech about how good it is to have family together during important events. Everyone saw through her crap and my son, Jack, called her out on it and said that she was selfish to bring this up on Jane's birthday. Christy started defending her mother and Jane, understandably upset, revealed that the only reason Christy was on their mother's side for reconciliation was because she didn't want the fact that she not only knew about the affair but helped her mother cover it up. There was a big fight that wasn't going to get resolved right then and there. I ended up leaving and was even more heartbroken all over again. Not only did my wife betray me but my own daughter too. I knew she was closer to her mother than me, and I was okay with that, but this. I don't know what I did to make my eldest daughter so disloyal to me, but I am now resolved to go full NC with her until after the divorce and possibly for the rest of my life.